The house was silent in a way that felt personal, like it remembered every argument, every slammed door, every unspoken word. Nina Taylor hadn't stepped foot inside her childhood home in over a decade, and now she returned not for reconciliation, but for closure. The scent of lavender and mothballs lingered in the air, clinging to the floral wallpaper that had yellowed with time. Nothing had changed, yet everything felt haunted. Upstairs, the rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor was the only indication that life still pulsed inside Marla Taylor. Nina stood at the threshold of her mother's bedroom, gripping the doorframe as if the house itself might swallow her whole. Marla lay in the hospital bed, her frame fragile beneath the crisp white sheet, oxygen tubes snaking into her nose. Her eyes fluttered open, cloudy, dim, but they landed on Nina with startling clarity. "You came," Marla rasped, her voice barely louder than a breath. "Of course I came," Nina said flatly. But they both knew that wasn't true. She hadn't come for birthdays, not for holidays, not even when the doctors first said the word terminal. She had come now out of obligation, or guilt, or maybe because the weight of unfinished business had finally become heavier than her pride. For a moment, silence hung between them like a fragile truce. Then Marla spoke again, her tone sharper this time. "You always thought I was the villain." Nina flinched. "You never gave me a reason not to." They locked eyes, mother and daughter, bound by blood but separated by years of resentment. Nina wanted to ask so many things. Why were you so cold? Why did you push me away? Why did you never tell me about Dad? But the questions felt like stones in her throat. Too heavy. Too late. Marla coughed, her hand trembling as it reached toward the nightstand. From beneath a pile of pill bottles and a weathered Bible, she pulled out a small brass key and pressed it into Nina's palm. Her skin was paper thin, ice cold. "The attic," Marla whispered. "It's all there." "What is?" Nina asked, confused. But Marla only closed her eyes. The monitor beside her began to slow, each beep more spaced than the last. A nurse rushed in, calling Marla's name, checking vitals. Nina stepped back, numb, as machines clicked and droned around her. When the nurse finally turned off the monitor and drew the sheet over her mother's face, Nina didn't cry. She looked down at the key in her hand, its teeth worn, its meaning unknown. Whatever truth Marla had taken to her grave had a location, and Nina was holding the key to it. The attic creaked like it hadn't been disturbed in decades. Dust floated in shafts of pale morning light as Nina pushed open the trapdoor and climbed the narrow wooden steps, heart hammering with a mixture of dread and curiosity. The air was thick, stale with secrets, weighted with the silence of things long hidden. She hadn't stepped into this attic since she was a child. Back then, it had been off limits. Marla had always said it was dangerous, unfinished, full of exposed nails and broken memories. Nina now understood that the warning wasn't about physical danger. It was about the truth. After nearly an hour of rummaging past moth-eaten coats, boxes of holiday decorations, and photo albums meticulously purged of anything meaningful, Nina found it. A loose floorboard near the far wall, nailed down but worn smooth at the edges. With effort, she pried it up and gasped. 3 ornate wooden boxes lay nestled in the hollow beneath, each one different, mahogany, cherry, and rosewood, but all carved with intricate vines and initials that weren't hers. She ran her fingers over them, feeling the craftsmanship, the care, the weight of their secrets. All were locked. Nina slid the key Marla had given her into the first box. The click was delicate, like unlocking the past with a whisper. Inside, she found forged birth certificates, dozens of them, bearing names that didn't match her own. Some were for baby girls, some for boys, but the handwriting was unmistakably Marla's. One certificate made her breath catch, the name Delilah Foster written in ornate script, with a birth date that eerily matched her own. The second box contained a bundle of letters, brittle with age, each one marked "Return to Sender." Nina unfolded a few, scanning the addresses. They had been sent all over the country, from Montana to Maine, but always addressed to Delilah Foster. Some were tear-stained, others creased from being opened and closed repeatedly. Many bore the same return address, the Foster Estate, New York. None had ever reached their intended recipient. The third box was the smallest, but it held the most unsettling artifact, a single, weathered photograph. Nina stared at it for a long time, heart thudding. It was a picture of a young woman standing by a fountain, her hand on her hip, smiling into the sun. The photo was dated in the corner, just over 30 years ago, but it wasn't the era that stunned her. It was the face. The woman in the picture looked exactly like Nina. Same eyes, same cheekbones, same expression she saw in her mirror every morning. But written on the back in careful cursive was a name Nina had never heard before, Delilah Foster. And beneath that, a single line, "You were never supposed to know." Nina sat back, the photo trembling in her hands. Suddenly, everything she thought she knew about her childhood, her mother, even her own identity, felt like a story someone else had written. And the author had just died. The name Delilah Foster echoed in Nina's mind like a bell that wouldn't stop ringing. She sat hunched over her laptop at the kitchen table, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes and stacks of forgotten memories, the attic's dust still clinging to her jeans. The photograph of the woman who looked exactly like her rested beside the computer, Delilah's face frozen in time, smiling as if she held all the answers Nina didn't yet know to ask. Curious and unnerved, Nina typed the name into a search engine. At first, nothing. Just scattered genealogy threads, a defunct Facebook profile with no photos, and an archived fashion blog last updated in 2005. Then, on page 3 of the results, she found it. Delilah Foster, heiress missing after family scandal. It was a scanned newspaper clipping from the late 90s, yellowed and grainy, but the headline was bold. Nina clicked to enlarge the article. Delilah Foster, 19, daughter of real estate mogul Howard Foster, vanished 2 months ago after a dramatic fallout with her family. Sources say the scandal involved a contested inheritance and allegations of financial misconduct. No evidence of foul play has been discovered, but the case remains open. Family has declined to comment further. The photo beside the article was grainy but unmistakable. It was the same woman in Nina's attic photo. The same face Nina saw in her reflection every morning. A chilling thought crept over her like a draft through a cracked window. Was she Delilah's daughter? But the dates didn't add up. The article was from the year Nina was born, not after. So, a darker, stranger question took root. Was she Delilah herself? It seemed impossible. Nina would remember a different life, being someone else, having a different name. Wouldn't she? But doubt had already begun its quiet invasion. She picked up the forged birth certificate again, the one bearing Delilah's name. The ink shimmered slightly under the light, and in the corner, a scribbled note in Marla's handwriting read, "Use this if anyone comes asking. She must never go back. She, not you," as if Nina had been someone else entirely. And Marla had always known. Nina's throat tightened. A rush of memories came unbidden. Marla snatching away letters she'd found as a child, tearing up a postcard before Nina could see the front, always keeping a padlock on the mailbox, the way she'd panic anytime someone knocked unexpectedly. It hadn't been paranoia, it had been protection. Or maybe, control. Was Delilah Foster a missing heiress? Or had she been erased and rewritten as someone else? The answers, Nina realized, weren't in dusty documents or newspaper clippings. They were buried somewhere deeper, inside herself. Nina hadn't thought of her father in years. Not really. Marla had kept the subject under lock and key, always brushing it off with clipped answers and icy finality. He left. End of story. And for a long time, Nina had accepted it, grudgingly. After all, what kind of man abandons a child and never looks back? But now, with everything unraveling, her mother's true identity in question, her own face staring back from the photo of a missing heiress, Nina realized she couldn't afford to accept anything at face value anymore, especially not Marla's version of the past. She returned to the attic. Something about the locked boxes still felt incomplete, like she had missed a step in the choreography of secrets. And then she saw it, a false bottom in the cherrywood box, thin enough to blend in but with a small notch along the edge. Inside was a folded letter, yellowed with age and sealed with wax, broken but lovingly pressed back together. The handwriting on the envelope was shaky but familiar. To my daughter. In case she ever finds this. Nina's breath caught as she unfolded the single sheet inside. The ink had bled slightly, as if tears had fallen across the paper. Nina, if you're reading this, then something has happened. I pray to God that you're safe, that she kept you safe. You may have grown up thinking I abandoned you. I didn't. I wanted to be there every day. I tried. But your mother, she's not who you think she is. She was never Marla Taylor. She was running from a truth so dangerous, she was willing to erase everything, including you, to protect it. I found something about her past, about your past. And when I confronted her, she begged me to leave it alone. But I couldn't. I had to know what I was part of, who you really were. That's when the threats started. Anonymous calls. Men watching the house. One night, I came home to find your crib empty. She was gone. You were gone. No note. No trail. I spent years trying to track you both. Every lead vanished into smoke, until I realized she didn't just leave me, she made sure no one could find you. If you found this, then I hope you're old enough to decide for yourself what to believe. But be careful, Nina. She didn't lie to hurt you. She lied to protect you from something bigger than either of us. But still, she lied. Dad. Nina sat frozen, the letter trembling in her hands. Her entire life, she had believed her father was a coward who had walked away from her without a second thought. But now, it was clear he had been chasing them, searching, fighting for her in silence, and losing. Why had Marla never told her? Why erase him from the narrative entirely? Unless he had discovered something he wasn't supposed to know. And it wasn't just Marla he was afraid of. It was whatever she was hiding. Nina looked again at the signature, blurred but unmistakable. Her father had never truly abandoned her. He had been outmatched by a story far darker than she ever imagined. And now, piece by piece, she was stepping into that story herself. The letter from her father didn't bring Nina peace. It cracked her open. The more she uncovered, the more she realized her childhood had been carefully staged, a theater of silence and shadows. And Marla, ever the director, had made sure Nina never saw behind the curtain. But now, the curtain was in tatters. Determined to follow the thread her father had nearly died chasing, Nina dove back into the attic. There was still one box she hadn't fully explored, the smallest, a lacquered cedar case with intricate carvings. She'd assumed it held nothing but old trinkets and papers. This time, she looked closer. Hidden beneath a false lining, she found a slim manila envelope labeled only with a single name, Ayala. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside were medical files, a string of dates, and 2 ultrasound prints, side by side. Both showed fetuses at the same gestational age. Twins. Nina blinked. She'd never been told she was a twin. Never seen a photo suggesting otherwise. Beneath the ultrasounds were 2 birth certificates. One for Nina Taylor, the other for Isla Foster. Same birthday. Different hospitals. Different mothers. Her heart pounded harder as she pulled out the final contents. Grainy surveillance photos, taken from a distance, time-stamped over the course of a year. Each image featured a little girl with long, dark curls and Nina's exact smile. But the backdrop changed. A marble foyer here, a garden estate there. Not their modest home, not anything Nina recognized. The photos weren't of her, they were of Isla. Whoever this girl was, she had lived another life. One of wealth, of privilege, of distance from whatever nightmare Marla had been hiding. But they were identical. Too identical. Nina raced back through the paperwork, searching for connections. Blood types, hospital logs, pediatrician records, discrepancies everywhere, as if someone had rewritten reality, line by line. A note scribbled in Marla's sharp, anxious script sat at the bottom of the envelope. One had to disappear, or both would die. Nina stared at the line, the ink scrawled in panic, desperation, or guilt. Had she been born a twin? Had Marla stolen one baby and hidden the other? Or worse, was Nina the stolen one? And who had decided which girl would live a lie? Who had chosen her? Suddenly, the attic felt colder, smaller, because if Isla was still alive, someone else out there might know the truth. And if Nina had taken a life meant for someone else, how far would someone go to take it back? Nina's hands trembled as she sorted through the brittle pages of the diary Marla had kept hidden. The book had been buried at the bottom of a cardboard box, hidden beneath layers of old, forgotten trinkets, as if Marla had known it would one day be found, and feared it. The ink was smudged and the handwriting irregular, as though her mother had written these entries in fits of desperation. The deeper Nina read, the more she understood. Marla's life had not been the quiet, controlled one she had imagined. It had been built on a foundation of chaos and blood. March 18, 1983. I don't know how much longer I can keep running. Howard's people are getting closer. I've burned the documents, hidden the money, but I can't hide the truth. Not anymore. Nina's eyes burned as she read the lines, the weight of the past pressing down on her. Who was Howard? The name rang a bell, a shadow she had seen in one of the papers, but never fully understood. The next entry was dated 2 days later. April 1st, 1983. I couldn't save her. I couldn't protect Delilah. She was too stubborn, too proud. She had to make a stand. But now it's too late. The police won't look at the case, and everyone around her is in danger. They'll try to pin it on me, but they won't succeed. I'll take her place if I must. If it's the only way to protect Nina, to protect all of us. Nina's breath caught in her throat. Delilah. The name appeared over and over again, like a ghost that haunted every corner of Marla's thoughts. But it was the mention of a murder that stopped her cold. What was Marla trying to protect her from? What had Delilah done, or been accused of, that had threatened their lives so completely? Nina turned the page in a daze, flipping quickly until she found the final, chaotic entry, its edges torn and smeared with what looked like blood. June 5th, 1984. It's done. They think I'm Delilah. They'll never know what happened to her. I'm sorry, my darling. You'll never understand. I can't tell you the truth now. Not until you're ready. Nina felt the room spin. Delilah was dead? Murdered? Was it an accident? Was she involved? Did Marla play a role in it? The pieces were slipping from her grasp, but the edges were jagged. What had her mother been trying to bury? And what had Delilah's life and death had to do with her own? The final page revealed a shocking admission. The murder wasn't planned. It wasn't the inheritance that drove her to it, nor the anger. It was love. Love that went too far. I tried to warn her, but she wouldn't listen. She didn't know who she was dealing with. She didn't know the true cost of being born into the foster family. Nina's mind raced. Inheritance? Family? What had Delilah done to provoke a murder? And why did Marla step into Delilah's identity to protect her? For the first time, Nina began to understand the level of deception and danger that had marked her life from the very beginning. Her mother wasn't just hiding a past. She was hiding a crime. A crime that, if revealed, could ruin everything. A crime that could explain why someone had been willing to swap babies, to destroy lives, to change destinies. Nina felt a chill seep into her bones. And in the silence of the attic, the truth was a shadow, waiting to pounce. Nina's heart raced as she stepped onto the crumbling gravel driveway of the foster family estate, her mind struggling to wrap around the staggering idea that her bloodline was tied to this sprawling mansion. She had imagined that this place, with its ivy-covered stone walls and looming towers, would be something out of a fairy tale, beautiful, otherworldly, almost unreal. But as she looked up at the towering iron gates, she realized the truth. It wasn't a dream. It was a prison. And inside, the secrets of her past would be just as twisted as the ones she had already uncovered. The old woman who greeted her at the door wasn't what Nina had expected. There was no grand matriarch, no regal lady in her 80s. Instead, she was greeted by a frail, hunched figure, dressed in black lace, with eyes like cold marbles that seemed to pierce right through her. "Delilah, you've come back," the woman whispered, her voice fragile as if she had spoken that name 1,000 times in her sleep. Nina froze, taken aback by the familiarity in the old woman's words. I'm not Delilah, Nina said, her voice shaky despite her attempt to remain composed. I'm Nina Taylor. The woman's eyes flickered in recognition, but there was no surprise, no shock, as if she had been waiting for Nina all along. I know who you are, my dear. You look just like her. Just like Delilah. Come inside. You've returned, just like I knew you would, the woman said, stepping aside, her bony hand outstretched. A shiver ran down Nina's spine. There was something in the way the old woman spoke, something unsettling in the air. The house was eerily quiet, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Nina stepped inside cautiously, unsure what she had expected, but it certainly wasn't this welcoming. The matriarch led Nina down a hallway, adorned with portraits of a family she didn't recognize, their stern faces staring down at her with silent judgment. She caught glimpses of the opulent life Delilah must have led, grand balls, expensive jewelry, luxurious dinners, but none of it seemed like it was meant for Nina. This is the family you were born into, the woman said as they reached a grand sitting room. The Fosters, though you were never meant to know us. They tried to erase you, hide you away, but I knew you would come back one day. The weight of the woman's words struck Nina like a slap. She had been running from the truth for so long, and yet here it was, standing right in front of her. My mother, Marla, Nina began, her voice barely a whisper. She never spoke about any of this. Why did she hide me from you? The woman's eyes darkened, the wrinkles around them deepening like creases in a forgotten letter. Marla did what she thought was best. She took you from us, hid you in plain sight. It was the only way to keep you safe after Delilah, after everything that happened. Nina swallowed hard, trying to process the weight of the words. What happened to Delilah? The old woman shook her head, a slow, mournful motion. That's a story you'll have to hear from someone else. But you are Delilah's daughter, whether you want to accept it or not. And it's time you understand who you truly are. Just then, the door creaked open, and a tall man stepped inside, his face a mirror image of the man in the portrait across the room. His eyes were sharp, calculating. A faint smile curled on his lips as he extended a hand toward Nina. You've returned after all, he said, his voice smooth and confident. It's a pleasure to meet you, Delilah. Nina recoiled instinctively. She could feel the weight of his gaze, assessing her every move. Who are you? Nina asked, her voice shaky but determined. He said, chuckling softly. I suppose it's time we all know who we really are, isn't it? He took a step closer, his smile widening. I'm your cousin Malcolm, and I've been waiting a long time for you to come home. The word cousin felt like a slap. Nina's mind reeled. There was a twisted familiarity in this place, in the cold way these strangers treated her like she was a lost piece of their puzzle, something they could claim but never truly understand. Her heart raced, and the walls seemed to close in around her. You've always been a part of this family, Delilah, Malcolm continued, his tone low and persuasive. You were meant to inherit everything. It's your birthright. Nina stepped back, feeling the weight of his words settle deep in her bones. She was nothing like them. She was a stranger here, an imposter. How could she be a part of this family after everything she had uncovered? The lies, the secrets, the murder. I don't know who you think I am, she said, her voice now firm, her posture defensive. But I'm not Delilah. The old woman, still standing by the door, smiled faintly. That's what you think. But the truth has a way of catching up with us, my dear. Nina turned toward the door, her heart hammering in her chest. She couldn't stay here, not like this. The lies were too thick in the air, suffocating her. Good luck, Delilah, Malcolm called after her, his voice laced with something darker. You'll need it. Nina didn't look back. Nina's mind swirled with confusion and anger as she left the Foster estate. The chilling words of Malcolm echoed in her head. You'll need it. What did he mean by that? And what was this twisted family game they expected her to play? But as the dust settled in her mind, one undeniable truth emerged. She was the key. The foster family believed she was Delilah, not just a daughter. The one who was supposed to take her place, inherit everything, and continue the bloodline. But Nina wasn't Delilah. She never had been. Her fingers curled around the small envelope she had found in the mansion. Another letter from her mother, one that she hadn't noticed earlier, tucked away in the back pocket of an old leather chair. The handwriting was unmistakable, a script she had come to dread. Marla. She opened it with trembling hands, her breath catching as she read the first few lines. Nina, my darling girl, if you're reading this, you must know the truth by now. I owe you an explanation. I've spent my life trying to protect you from the horrors of the foster family, from the legacy of betrayal and greed that we are both part of. But now, you must know the full story. Nina's heart raced as she read on. This wasn't just a letter of confession. This was the final, devastating truth. You were never meant to be raised by me. You weren't my daughter. I didn't give birth to you, Nina. You were a stolen child, a replacement. Delilah was meant to be my niece, but when the family realized what she had done, they made a choice. They needed her to disappear. They needed someone to take her place, and I couldn't bear to let them take you. I couldn't let them erase you too. The room around Nina blurred as the letter's words sank in. You weren't my daughter. Nina's breath caught a bitter taste rising in her throat. It felt like the floor had been ripped from beneath her. The woman who had raised her, who had been so cold, so distant, had never been her mother. Marla had stolen her. She had stolen her from someone else. I've lied to you, Nina, all these years. I've raised you as my own, but you were always meant to be someone else's child. Someone who never knew you existed. I've tried to protect you, but in doing so, I've kept you in the dark. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for every moment I kept this from you. Nina could barely see through the tears welling in her eyes. She fought them back, forcing herself to keep reading, to push through the pain. The truth, though, is that I wasn't the only one who kept secrets. The foster family has been hiding the truth for decades, manipulating the lives of those they claimed to love. They made sure Delilah's death would be covered up, that you would never find out who you really were. And when I took you, they thought I was trying to protect you. They were wrong. Nina slammed the letter down onto the table, her mind reeling. The magnitude of what Marla had confessed was overwhelming. She had been a pawn in a game of family betrayal, swapped at birth, raised under false pretenses. And now, it was all coming crashing down. But as the weight of the confession settled, something darker began to emerge. Something far more dangerous. Marla had stolen Nina to protect her, yes, but from what? Nina thought of the murder, the bloodline, the inheritance. She thought of Malcolm's eerie warning, the coldness in his voice. The Fosters were hiding something far worse than she had imagined, and they weren't done with her yet. They will come for you, Nina. They'll want to use you. They'll want to make you their puppet. But you are stronger than that. You are not Delilah, and you will not let them turn you into her. I've done everything to keep you safe, but I can't protect you anymore. The final line of the letter hit Nina like a punch to the gut. They'll come for you. The Fosters would not stop until they got what they wanted. Control. She wasn't just a lost child in their eyes. She was an heir to be claimed, a legacy to be manipulated. But Nina refused to be a pawn. She would fight. She would uncover the truth, no matter how dark it became. With trembling hands, she stood up, determined. Her mother's lies were unraveling before her eyes, and the truth was more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. But this was her story now, and she was no longer going to let the Fosters or anyone else control her destiny. Nina sat alone in the dimly lit lawyer's office, the envelope in her hands heavier than it should have been. The wax seal was broken, but it didn't matter. It was the letter inside that consumed her every thought, the words her mother had written before her death, the final piece of a puzzle that had twisted and turned her life into something unrecognizable. She had already uncovered the stolen identity, the bloodline betrayal, and the family legacy built on lies. But this letter, the one that had just been delivered by the family's lawyer, was the last confession, the truth her mother had kept hidden even as she faded away. Nina's fingers trembled as she opened the letter, the paper crinkling under the pressure. Her breath caught as she read the first line, recognizing Marla's careful handwriting, soft and delicate, yet burdened by years of secrets. "Nina, my dear girl, if you are reading this, then I know I am gone. I wish I could be there to tell you myself, to hold your hand as you finally hear the truth, but I can't. And I am sorry, more sorry than I have ever been in my life. Please, know that every decision I made was for you, even though I could never bring myself to tell you why." Nina's chest tightened. Marla's words, though filled with guilt, still carried a coldness, a distance that Nina had always felt in their relationship. She had wanted so much more than this: honesty, connection, anything other than the silence that had haunted their home. But this letter, it was different. It was an apology, a raw, aching confession. "The truth is, you were never meant to be raised by me. I didn't give birth to you, Nina. I didn't want to steal you away, but I couldn't let them have you. The family, the Fosters, they wanted you, and they wanted you dead. You weren't just a child to them, you were a pawn in a game bigger than either of us." Her heart hammered in her chest, the words cutting through her like a blade. The truth that had slowly unfolded over the past days was now being confirmed. She wasn't Marla's daughter, she had never been. The Foster family had wanted her, they had wanted to destroy her, replace her, and bury her. But Marla had fought them. She had fought with everything in her. "I never wanted to raise you as Delilah, but I had no choice. The Fosters would have taken you, Nina. They would have erased you, and you would have been a pawn in their twisted inheritance battle. I was trying to protect you, to save you from a legacy of murder and betrayal that you never deserved. I swapped you with Delilah's child, Isla. You were supposed to be raised by someone else, someone who could protect you in ways I never could." The words blurred as Nina read the sentence over and over again. Isla, her name wasn't even her own. She wasn't Nina Taylor. She wasn't Delilah Foster. She wasn't anyone. She was the child of a desperate woman who had sacrificed everything to keep her alive. "I know you will hate me for this. I know you will never forgive me. But please understand, I never wanted this life for you. I didn't want you to be part of this twisted world. I just wanted you to live. I wanted you to have a chance at a life that wasn't soaked in blood and lies." Nina felt a lump rise in her throat, the years of resentment and anger threatening to spill over. She had spent her entire life feeling abandoned, betrayed by the woman who had raised her, the woman who had kept her distant and cold. But now she understood. Marla had kept her distant, kept her cold, because she couldn't love her. She couldn't let herself love the child she had stolen. The murder, the accusations against Delilah, the family's twisted pursuit of power, it was all meant to destroy her, and in the process, destroy you too. But I couldn't let that happen. I couldn't let them make you disappear. So I did the only thing I could do. I swapped you with Isla, and I took you with me. I made a new life for you, a life where the Fosters couldn't touch you. The weight of the confession crashed down on Nina. Marla had taken her from someone else, a child who had been meant for another life, a child who could have had a family, a future, a place in the world that wasn't built on lies. Nina's hands shook as she continued to read. "I know the lies will haunt you, Nina. I know the truth will be hard to bear. But please know this. Every decision I made, every sacrifice I made was for you. I wanted to protect you from the horrors of the Foster family, from the legacy of murder and greed. I wanted you to have a chance, to live a life where you could be free. And if I could do it all again, I would. I would do it in a heartbeat, even if it meant never telling you the truth." Nina's breath caught, her chest tight as she processed the final words. Marla had loved her. She had loved her enough to ruin her own life, to sacrifice her own identity for Nina's safety. But it wasn't just about safety anymore. Marla had loved her enough to let her go, to push her into the world where the Fosters could never touch her. And now, with her mother's last words in her hands, Nina understood the true cost of the life she had been given. "I hope you can find peace, Nina. I hope you can forgive me, though I know you may never be able to. But if you remember one thing from this, remember this. You were never meant to live in the shadows of the Foster family. You were meant to live in the light, to be free of the bloodshed that has stained us all. I love you. Always. The final line hung in the air like a prayer. Nina's chest tightened, the tears welling in her eyes, but she could no longer cry. There was nothing left to cry for. The woman she had resented for so long had given her everything, her life, her safety, her future. And in doing so, she had given up everything herself. Nina stood, staring out the window at the fading sunlight. Marla had died a liar, but she had died a mother too. A mother who had protected her daughter from a world of darkness, even if it meant never being truly seen. As she folded the letter, she whispered softly to the wind, "I understand, Mom, and I forgive you." The cemetery was quiet, wrapped in a hush that felt sacred. Wind swept gently across the hillside, carrying with it the scent of spring grass and blooming dogwood trees. Nina stood alone beneath a gray sky, one hand clutching a folded photograph, the other tracing the engraved letters on a cold granite headstone. Marla Taylor, 1958 to 2025. Beloved daughter, devoted mother. The word devoted used to make Nina flinch. She remembered reading it at the funeral, feeling the hypocrisy of it sink into her bones like sleet. Devoted? Marla had been distant, guarded, so emotionally walled off. Nina used to joke there was more warmth in a tax audit, but now, after everything, the letters, the lies, the love hidden in layers of sacrifice, Nina finally understood. Devotion didn't always look like affection. Sometimes it looked like survival. She kneeled slowly, her jeans brushing against the dewy grass, and pulled the photo from her coat pocket. It was aged, the edges curled. In the image, two infant girls lay side by side in matching pink bonnets, a moment of innocence frozen in time. One was her, the other, Isla. Or maybe it was the other way around. Even Nina wasn't sure anymore. Still, it didn't matter. That photo was all that remained of the beginning neither of them had ever truly known. She placed the picture at the base of the headstone, weighing it down with a small stone. It fluttered briefly, like it didn't want to stay. "I hated you," she whispered. "I hated you for so many years. For the silence, for the coldness, for never telling me the truth." She swallowed hard. Her voice trembled, not from grief, but from the weight of clarity. "I thought you were the villain in my story. Turns out you were the reason I had a story at all." The wind picked up, rustling the trees around her, as if the world were sighing with her. "You weren't perfect. God, you were so far from perfect. But you kept me safe. You gave me a life outside the war zone I was born into, and now that I know what that cost you, I can't hate you anymore." She looked up at the sky, gray and soft like wool. There was no bright beam of light, no sign from above, just a quiet certainty blooming in her chest, a knowing, a peace. "I don't know what's next. I still have so many questions. About Isla, about the Fosters, about who I even am. But for the first time, I'm not scared to find out." Her fingers lingered on the headstone one last time. "Thank you, Mom," she said softly. "Not for the lies, but for the life those lies protected." Nina stood, brushed the damp from her knees, and walked away, not with the weight of the past dragging her down, but with the grace of someone who had faced the truth and survived it. Behind her, the photo stayed in place. Two babies, two names, one mother who had done the unthinkable for love,